Why was Frank Pavone really dismissed from the clerical state? Stick around to find out.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Reason and Theology on a Monday morning. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I saw over the weekend some unfortunate news about Frank Pavone being dismissed from the clerical state, and along with it came a whole host of videos on why this really happened. And there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so I wanted to weigh in because I had an excessive amount of people contact me and ask me for my opinion. And instead of just individually messaging everybody, I can just put a video out there and you'll see what my thoughts are on this issue. It's, of course, always unfortunate whenever any priest is dismissed from the clerical state. And I certainly want to say about Father, well, he's no longer Father Pavone, but Frank Pavone's um, ministry. I certainly want to say I'm very thankful for the time that he offered as in his service as a priest. I'm very grateful for that, for the many people that he provided the sacraments for. So I really do appreciate that. I'm also very thankful for his work in the pro-life movement. um the issue of um the murder of innocent infants in the womb is a huge one for me. Many of y'all know that one of my children was aborted against my will, and so it's a very, very painful subject for me. I've only been able to, it happened many years ago, back in 2006, I believe, but um I've only been able to begin to really open up and speak about it for the last few years. It's just been such a difficult and painful subject. So I appreciate anybody who stands up for an innocent infant's right to life, because when I was there, um, doing everything I could to save the life of my child, I didn't find really any resources. I didn't find any help. I didn't find any sympathetic voices. So I appreciate the fact that there are people out there like Pavone who are doing everything they can to be those voices. So I'm truly grateful for that, and I really think that that's commendable. So that being said, however, we still need to discuss the question of him being laicized, and whether this was just or unjust, and what should the proper response be, and stuff like that. But for those who may not be familiar, being laicized, it doesn't mean that you're not still sacramentally or ontologically a priest. Whenever you're ordained, you're a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. There's an indelible mark on your soul, so you're always able to confect the sacraments. But that doesn't mean that you have the right to confect the sacraments, or the privileges that come along with it. So whenever you're laicized, yeah, you still have the ability to confect the sacraments, but you don't have the privileges. So you're not allowed to identify yourself as a priest and go out and call yourself Father Frank Pavone and stuff like that. A good definition that I saw from the Catholic World Report on laicization is this, or being laicized, I should say, is this: a laicized priest is forbidden to celebrate the sacraments, with the exception of hearing confessions and absolving a sinner in danger of death. Any other sacramental celebration is unlawful and done it thus an act of disobedience. So it's not that they're invalid. If you try to confect a sacrament after you've been laicized, it's still valid, but it's unlawful and it's disobedient. So you basically don't have the privileges of a priest any longer. Um, but you still have the ability to confect a sacrament. And I saw some people on social media stirring people up saying, oh, well, he's a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. And so they're wrong for calling him Mr. Pavone. Well, look, if James Martin was laicized, wouldn't he still say the same thing about James Martin? You're still a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek, and it's wrong to call him Mr. Martin at that point? Well, I mean, obviously there's a difference between night and day between some aspects of Pavone and Martin, but the point is somebody can be a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. That has nothing to do with whether or not they have the privilege and right to be called a priest. Those are two separate issues. So it seems that people are doing some equivocating here. Now, what is the difference between this and excommunication? That was one of the questions that I was asked. So being laicized just again means that you're dismissed from the clerical state, so you don't have the privileges of a priest. But being excommunicated is different. It's a step further. It says that you're also now outside of the church and you're unable to receive the sacraments. Those are two separate things. So right now, he could still go and receive Holy Communion or something along those lines. So now I'm not weighing in on the state of his soul on whether or not he should be receiving communion. I'm just talking about canonically whether he could go in theory to receive Holy Communion. Yes, because he hasn't been excommunicated. There's a difference between being laicized and excommunicated. All right, so a little bit about who Pavone is. He is obviously defrocked priest, but also pro-life advocate, director of Priests for Life, president of National Pro-Life Religious Council. He also had some leadership and served as a leader in several positions for President Trump's 2020 campaign. So he's had kind of a political ministry. He himself says that the Pope has commended his pro-life work. So he's been very active in the pro-life area, politically, spiritually, for a very long time. And once again, I do want to say I really do appreciate his advocacy for the right of life, for innocent humans who can't speak for themselves. Now, the laicization, I guess is how you would say it, happened in November of 2022 this year. So about a month ago, and he just came out recently saying that he wasn't notified of this. Now he's aware of it, but he said that he wasn't directly notified of this. I don't know if that's true. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Maybe there's some miscommunication. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I also want to give the benefit of the doubt to his superiors. So, at this point, he's been notified, and that's going to be important, as we're going to see in a little bit. Now, if you go online right now, you're going to see a million conspiracies on why he was really laicized, right? All kinds of conspiracies, all kinds of people exploiting this for their own agenda, saying, he's being persecuted because of his pro-life advocacy. And because of this, Marcel Lefebvre and the SSPX were right all along. And we need to resist the Catholic clergy, and we need to resist these apostates. And again, people are using this to exploit their own cause. Unfortunately, a lot of those voices online, a lot of them just stirring up dissent against Christ's hierarchy and Christ's church and the institution that Christ established while calling themselves Catholics. There's a lot of that going on right now. And then a lot of people are asking questions about, why is it that he was disciplined, but not somebody like James Martin? And you know what? To an extent, that's a fair question that I'm sympathetic to. Because I certainly want to say, look, it makes very little sense on the whole, in the grand scheme of things, for people to be disciplined who are, on the conservative side, but not disciplined those who are on the liberal side. Um, I think that we do need to be balanced in our and consistent in discipline. But however, the problem is the superior of Pavone is not the same superior who is over Martin. So it's kind of like saying, well, I guess Pavone's superior can't discipline any of his priests until Martin's superior disciplines some of his priests. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, now does it? It doesn't make sense. It would be like saying, you know what? What if Father Martin was disciplined tomorrow and somebody were to come out and say, you know what? Father Martin can't be disciplined because Richard Rohr is still out there. Father Richard Rohr is still out there and he hasn't been disciplined. You would say, wait, those two things don't have anything to do with each other because it's not the same superior. Or what if somebody came and said, you know what, this priest who is guilty of some kind of sexual immorality with someone, well, he can't be removed from the priesthood and disciplined because you still have Father Martin out there or Richard Rohr out there. It again assumes that one person can't be disciplined because there's other people out there that haven't been disciplined, and these other people don't belong to the same superior. So one superior can't discipline his people because there's other superiors out there failing to do their part. So on the one hand, I'm sympathetic to the point that, yeah, why do we have someone like Pavone disciplined, but not at the same time Martin, Father Martin? On the one hand, I'm somewhat sympathetic to that. Sure, we need to have some consistency. At the same time, it's apples and oranges insofar as it's not the same superior. And that then assumes that, well, you can't discipline one person until everyone else has been disciplined. It's just not a really good argument. It will, however, work to stir up a whole lot of people who aren't critically thinking through the issues. You'll notice that. The people who are, again, identifying themselves as Catholics online today, but are effectively in schism and are pushing for a schismatic mentality and are warring and waging war against Christ's institution, those people are very effective at stirring up people who do not critically think through these situations. They're very good at pointing out these inconsistencies and say, yeah, Martin hasn't been disciplined, therefore this is unjust. And for, again, the average person, that works because the average person isn't critically thinking through these things. They're just emotionally responding. And that's unfortunate. What I want to do is call us to a higher standard and say, but let's think through this a little bit more critically without letting our emotions get the best of us. And those who are engaging in, stirring people up against Christ's hierarchy, let's see it for what it is. These are people who are in dissent against Christ's church, and they're effectively pushing for a Protestant ecclesiology while claiming to be traditional. Now, why was he really laicized? Again, there's a million conspiracies out there. But I want to say it's very clear why he was laicized. And there are reasons given for why he was laicized. And I want to say, let's go to those rather than wild-eyed conspiracy theories. You'll notice a common theme here, situation after situation after situation in the church. Instead of people going to the most obvious reasons for why something happened, they'll go to the most wild conspiracies in trying to explain the situation. And you'll notice I have to continue to come here on YouTube and talk people off the ledge and say, hey, things might not be the way you think they are. Let's not resort to these crazy conspiracy theories. Let's look to the more obvious reasons. So what is the real reason why he was laicized? The reason that was given, which is twofold. Number one, quote, blasphemous communications on social media, end quote. And the second is, quote, persistent disobedience of the lawful instructions of his diocesan bishop, end quote. Now, somebody might say, yeah, but we want more specifics than that. Sure, that's fine. Yeah, let's get more specific. Can we name some incidents of blasphemous communications? Yep. Can we name some instances of persistent disobedience to his diocesan bishop? Yep. Did they give specifics beyond that? No. Should they have? I think it would have been helpful, but they at least gave us these general reasons, and we already can verify particular instances that meets that description. So if you want, go to this. I'm not going to read the article to you, but I'm going to point you to it. This is one of the articles that first came out. That seems pretty balanced, I would say. This is on Catholic World Report. Breaking Vatican dismisses Father Frank Pavone from the priesthood. I will put that in the description. And I encourage you to go and read it because it is balanced. It presents the case of the hierarchy and also presents his responses. Now, he has offered some more responses since this article. So those are also available, but it does its best to be fair to him. So it goes over some cases of blasphemy in social communication, some instances where he is using language unbecoming of a priest excessively and frequently, and also instances of being disobedient to his diocesan bishop. So it goes over that, and then it also goes over his side of the story. Now, again, there's also more to it than just his side of the story. I'm sure there's much more that the hierarchy could say and probably isn't saying at the moment. There's probably a lot of things going on behind the scenes that the diocesan bishop and also the Vatican is aware of that isn't put out there in the open. It's a strong possibility. So there's always two sides to the story, but I think it does a good job at balancing out things because it doesn't just present the case against him. It also presents his own response against some of these problems. In addition to being blatantly disobedient to his bishop, and by the way, if one is going to say, well, I think that that's a spurious accusation, well, guess what? He is still identifying himself as a priest wearing a clerical collar. Does that not prove the point? Let me show my screen. This was just posted 18 hours ago. Father Frank Pavone, still identified here in the title, Father Frank Pavone, in the name of his channel. And you can see he is still wearing a clerical collar. So he's already been made aware of the fact that he has been laicized. And guess what? He is still identifying himself as a priest, which he should not be doing. That seems to prove the already existent complaint on part of the hierarchy that there is a disobedience to lawful authority, disobedience to the hierarchy. So if he was innocent of that accusation, he just proved them right, unfortunately. It seems like what he should have done is taken a Padre Pio response, which we're going to look at here in a moment. I also want to show something. I'm not going to show the full picture. It is censored. I cannot in good conscience show the actual original photo. But this is a picture of a 45-minute video in 2016 of Pavone, who on social media streamed 45 minutes of a message with an aborted baby there on the table that it also is used as an altar. It is a table that he uses for multiple purposes. You can also see it's very clearly also functions as an altar. I mean, how many tables do you see these kinds of candles on? Not a lot, right? But these are frequently used for an altar. He had this video where he used an aborted baby, unfortunately, as a prop for a message against abortion. Now, I'm sure the heart of the intention here was to show how horrible abortion is and to say, hey, we need to vote for Trump, because that's what the message was. He was saying, look how horrible this thing is. We need to vote for Trump. to stop abortion. Look, I am so sympathetic to saying, look, we need to say abortion is horrible and we should vote for people who are going to fight against this horrible evil. I'm right there with him. What I'm not okay with is actually using an aborted fetus that was given to him for burial and then using it on camera as a prop. Did he even have permission from the parents to do this? I would love to know. I'd love to hear his response. But even if he did, which I'm not aware of him having that permission, but let's say he did, that is a horrible thing to do. The child deserves more dignity than this. And this was one of the complaints of his bishop. His bishop says this is, quote, against the dignity of human life and is a desecration of the altar, end quote. You know what Pavone's response to that was? He quibbled over whether or not this is an altar. That was his response, to quibble over whether or not this is an altar. He says this is actually a table and it's used for other things. And sometimes to celebrate mass on it. So sometimes it's an altar, but then it's not really an altar, it's a table. I think that misses the point. Whether this is a table that also functions as an altar is irrelevant, because the bigger issue is this is against the dignity of human life. To quibble over whether this is a table or an altar is to deflect, unfortunately. And yes, I have seen the real video and without the censor, and it is unfortunately an aborted fetus there on the table altar. And it's very tragic, and I wanted to throw up seeing it. Um, I think that the child deserves more dignity than that. So this is a huge reason why. Um, because a lot of people felt that this was just, again, against the dignity of human life. To promote this on social media was just blasphemous. And that was one of the concerns of the hierarchy. Again, I understand the intention behind this, but we can communicate the same message without violating the dignity of that innocent infant. So, okay. Now, I do want to say another thing that he has said in response to this, all that very much troubled me, was he wanted to say, the hierarchy is disciplining me, but I'm effectively going to ignore all that because this is really something that the court of popular opinion should be weighing in on. The laity, the faithful, they should really be the ones weighing in on this. And so he says to his superiors, let's go on a live stream and let's discuss this live, and we'll let the laity decide this. That's a Protestant ecclesiology. It's not the laity who determines who is going to be a priest or not. It's the hierarchy. We're not Protestants. The court of popular opinion, this isn't a democracy. And if we allow for that, think about that for a second. Let's say Martin is disciplined. Father James Martin. Okay, should we go to the court of popular opinion? I imagine there's a whole bunch of people online who are out there who are Catholics. Maybe they're not online, but the majority of Catholics in the United States would probably say he shouldn't be laicized. Should we go to them and allow them to determine whether or not he should be a priest? No, this is ultimately up to the hierarchy to appeal to popular opinion and the laity and say the laity should decide this for themselves. I think is to promote a Protestant ecclesiology, which is a very, very common theme that I'm seeing here for people who are being disobedient to the hierarchy. And it's very unfortunate. I would ultimately say, rather than going to the laity to justify you, go to God to justify you. Let God fight your cause. Let God vindicate you, not the laity. Now we have to ask the question, okay, was this unjust, right? Is the hierarchy being unjust here? Some are saying, like Father Gerald Murray, who's a canon lawyer, that this is outside of the canonical penalties for the instances that um, are brought up against Pavone. That may or may not be true. I imagine there's some other canon lawyers who would respond to that, but let's just go ahead and grant that for a moment. Let's say that the hierarchy is unjustly persecuting him, which is what he's trying to say. Pavone is indicating that he's being persecuted because of his pro-life advocacy, even though he himself says that Pope Francis commended him for his pro-life advocacy. But let's just assume for a moment this was a violation of canon law. Well, Murray wants to say, well, the only way this could be legit is if Pope Francis is behind this. Well, guess what? If Pope Francis doesn't come out and reverse this, we already know that he's behind it. And at that point, it does become canonical because the Pope is over canon law. So he can decide to laicize somebody, even if that's not a specific penalty for the things that are cited against him, since he is supreme over canon law, which Murray does admit. So again, as this plays out, if Pope Francis doesn't come out and say, no, I'm overturning this, then you already know Pope Francis is backing this up. And Pope Francis has, according to Pavone, already backed up his ministry as far as advocating for pro-life. Therefore, that means it's not because he is advocating for pro-life that he was disciplined. It's the more obvious reasons: a lack of obedience and the whole issue with infants, the infant on the table altar, among other things. Now, again, let's just assume for the moment, for argument's sake, that this was unjust and he is being unjustly persecuted here. What should his response be? Should he go the Martin Luther route? I'm going to put this into the hands of the laity. I'm going to stir up the laity to fight for me. Should he go that route? Or should he go the Padre Pio route? I think that one should go the Padre Pio route if they are being unjustly treated. What is the Padre Pio route? I know I've spoken about this before, but some of y'all may have not seen those videos. So let me actually go to this article for you and briefly read the Padre Pio response. Here's how we should respond whenever we are unjustly persecuted by the hierarchy. Rather than promote a Protestant ecclesiology, rather than going the Martin Luther route, rather than being disobedient and proving the hierarchy right, here's what we should be doing. And that's what Padre Pio did. Take a look at this article by Alitia. This is entitled, How St. Padre Pio Responded When the Vatican Silenced Him. Because he was unjustly treated by the Vatican, but he was later vindicated by the Vatican. Here's how he responded. Take a look at this article. Many were skeptical of Padre Pio's miraculous stigmata and all the attention he was getting from thousands of pilgrims who flocked to his monastery. Some in the Vatican worried that Padre Pio's fame was based on a lie and that people were following a false prophet. It's a legitimate concern. They launched multiple investigations, as they should. You want your hierarchy being discerning, and even planted secret listening devices to hear his conversation. There were a few among the hierarchy who were bent on catching Padre Pio and who insisted that he was fooling everybody and leading a double life. This culminated in an effort to move the beloved friar to a different monastery and to forbid him from acting as a priest in a public manner. Did you catch that? The local people were furious when they heard he was to be moved. According to the biography of Padre Pio, The True Story, around 10 p.m., a furious mob descended upon the friary. They barred the door from a priest they believed would take Padre Pio away. The crowd didn't leave until Padre Pio spoke to them, saying, "My blessed children, now I implore you to listen to me as you always do and return to your homes without harming anyone." He didn't take the Martin Luther route, stirring up people into a frenzy against the institution of the church like some Catholics are doing online right now. He did not do that. He didn't take the Martin Luther route. He instead told them to return home. This made it clear to church officials that Padre Pio could not be moved peacefully. Instead, the Vatican decided to restrict his faculties, removing him from public life. They laicized him. What happened to Pavone? He was laicized. Same thing happened to Padre Pio. Now watch this. Padre Pio is to be stripped of all the faculties of his priestly ministry, except the faculty to celebrate Holy Mass. Now, that is slightly different from Pavone's case, but effectively, he is being laicized. So it's effectively in the same category, which he may continue to do privately, that is, provided that it is done in private, within the walls of the friary, in the inner chapel, and not publicly in the church. Now, in the case of Pavone, he's also not to celebrate him private. So slightly different. It was a difficult cross for him to bear, but he obeyed and submitted to the decree. The superior of the monastery read to Padre Pio the decree, and the saintly friar responded, "God's will be done. The will of the superiors is the will of God." Full stop. Notice the difference between how Pavone has reacted to this. Still continues to wear the clerical collar, presents himself as a priest, is waging war against the hierarchy by saying, no, let's take this to the laity and let them decide. As opposed to Padre Pio, who did not do that and could have easily done that. He did not do that. But he said the will of the bishop, who was unjust to him. The will of this unjust bishop is the will of God. Why is that? Because God in his providence is speaking through the hierarchy and is working through the hierarchy, even through their imperfections, even through their sins. Yes, that's in sacred scripture. You see that in the book of Genesis. Joseph says to his brothers, you meant this as evil against me, but God meant this as good. God takes people's evil intentions and uses it for good. So you can take the evil intentions and the persecutions of an unjust bishop against a just man, and he can work it for good. But if you dissent against that hierarchy, you're just proving them right rather than proving them wrong. Padre Pio proved them wrong. Unfortunately, I'm getting the impression Pavone is proving the hierarchy right. Padre Pio would spend the next several years in silence, celebrating Mass privately and accepting no visitors. He could not even write to his spiritual children, which broke his heart. During this time, many came to Padre Pio's defense, submitting petitions, writing letters, and even publishing books. Padre Pio was appalled by this response. Notice that. He wasn't saying, oh yeah, go and do this. Fight for my cause. Let the laity judge me. He's not pulling a Pavone here. He was appalled by this response and urged them to stop writing to the local bishop to assert his disassociation with them. He disassociated with those who were fighting for his cause. He says, I must repeat that I am very disgusted by the unworthy behavior of certain false prophets. He calls them false prophets. That's true of those who are online dissenting against the hierarchy today, who call themselves Catholics. They're false prophets who speak in my behalf. They should stop this false and unworthy propaganda. That is also true. People are waging war against the church while calling themselves Catholics, engaging in propaganda campaigns to defend dissident priests and schisms against the church. But he goes on, but meanwhile, they have followed in their morbid fascination or fanaticism, not caring about the supreme authority of the church. I turn, therefore, as a son, most humble and completely obedient to the Catholic Church. Notice his response against the dissenters in the church today. And there's a lot of them. With profound humility, I kiss your sacred ring and profess myself to your excellency, your most humble and obedient son. He says this to a bishop who is unjustly persecuting him. Above all, even though the accusations put against him proved false, and he would eventually be allowed to minister without restrictions, Padre Pio submitted to the decree, remained silent, trusting in God's provident plan. So my thing is, if you are unjustly persecuted by the hierarchy, submit to God's providence. Prove them wrong by your humility and your obedience. Let God fight your cause, not the faithful, not the laity. Let God defend you. Let him vindicate you. And if you are innocent, he will vindicate you if that is his will. It could be his will to allow you for the rest of your life to endure persecution. What we shouldn't do, however, is fight against God's providence and say, these people are unjust. They're persecuting me because I'm pro-life. That is not the path to holiness and sanctity. That is the path to schism. So I hope this is helpful. I'm hoping that we're going to see an about face from Pavone, that he's going to take this in a different direction. I hope he proves the hierarchy wrong and not right. If he's unjustly persecuted, you know what? I'm sympathetic, but prove them wrong. Show them your humility. Show them your obedience. Show them your love for the church. Despite all of the sins and flaws of the hierarchy, show them your obedience and love, and you will prove them wrong. But if you dissent against this, you keep pushing for identifying oneself as a priest and trying to have the faithful defend your cause and stir up dissent against the hierarchy, you're just proving them right. And at that point, you're no better than a Martin Luther. So I hope that we're going to see a Padre Pio out of this and Pavone rather than a Martin Luther. Only time will tell. And it could be that Pope Francis comes back and reverses this. At this moment, he has no appeal. He has no appeal. Which would then mean, if that's true, if he has no appeal, that this would be something that Pope Francis is backing. But it could be Pope Francis comes back and says, nope, I'm not behind this. I'm reversing it. If that happens, praise God. Praise God. Right? If that doesn't happen, this is the will of God. Providentially. He is allowing, even if it's an unjust persecution, he is allowing it to create and to accomplish a greater good, because God does allow evil and sin in the world to create a greater good out of it. That is what Romans talks about in chapter 8. God wills all things for those who love him, and they are according to his purposes. In fact, we can go to it. It's, I believe, Romans 28. This might be a helpful verse for us. I think it's Romans 8, 28 through 29, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah. 28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. And that is even in sin. God uses sin. God uses evil to bring about a greater good. That's why we can be Christians and say God is good, even though the world around us is filled with evil and immorality. Some say, how can you believe God is good? He allows for the Holocaust. He allows for all of these things. Yes, humans mean these things for evil, but God will take that evil and direct it for good, as we see in Genesis 50 with Joseph. And God will work good out of it. And if this is an evil against Pavone, God will bring good out of it. But one should resign and abandon themselves to the holy will of God in his providence. It's called abandonment to God's providence, just as we saw with Padre Pio. Okay, I hope this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button. Please share this on your social media. People are going crazy online. Try to send this to them to talk them off the ledge. Hopefully it'll help. And, if you want to support what I'm doing so I could continue to do these videos, certainly please consider supporting me on patreon.com/reason and theology, or hitting the join button here on YouTube to become a channel member. Either way, you're going to get access to extra content. And again, you're going to help me to be able to continue to do this full time as an online channel. Okay, I will see y'all later. God bless you all. Please pray for me. Please pray for Pavone and the situation, and that God's will be done. And if he is innocent, he will be vindicated. And if he is not, again, that God's will be done. All right, we'll see you later. God bless.
Oh, wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel. This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/reason and theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, And be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home, office, or any kind of property anywhere in the world, you're going to want to call Real Estate for Life, and they're going to connect you with a Catholic agent. Now, that agent will donate a portion of their commission upon sale, and Real Estate for Life will donate 75% of that gift to a pro-life organization at no cost to you. Call Real Estate for Life at 1-877-LIFE-US1 or text them 248-431-1440. If you care about the pro-life cause, call them now.